If you were advising Ryan Routh, what would you tell him about who he should be looking for to have on his jury?
Well, we want those anti-establishment types of people, those that are tend to be more forward thinking. They don't necessarily trust law enforcement. They have very strong, they're very strong opinionated, they're independent thinkers. And that's what he's going to be looking for. So it's interesting because I feel like when he's going to be talking to the jury, I think it's going to be very difficult for him to hold back his own feelings, a tone, his facial expressions, his mannerisms, all of that. I think that is going to be detrimental for him because I don't think he's going to be able to hold it all together.
He's a very unusual individual. I've been in court with him a couple of times, and he's quirky. And you are an expert on this. You know that we like people generally that we can relate to, that are personable, and he doesn't strike me as that type. So, what would you tell him if you were coaching him up about presenting to the jury? How do you talk to the jury, right? Like, what would Susan tell him to do about his own presentation?
Sure. And I've worked a lot of cases where I've worked with defendants. Not quite, this case is highly unusual, but he needs to maintain a professional decorum. So, what I would be doing pre-trial, I would be hammering him with all kinds of questions. I want to see how he's going to respond. What are his triggers? So, I think that with that being said, he has to be acutely aware of his verbals and nonverbals. He needs to keep his questions sharp, to the point, and professional and succinct. Also, when he's speaking to the jury, you brought up a very good point. Juries are won or lost in the presentation. He's going to be judged just based on his opening statement. Guilty, non guilty. That's what the research says. So he needs to be likable, approachable. He also has to appear as if he is a genuine, authentic individual. So that's going to be really hard because you're asking him to be something he's not. So that's why I think that when we're watching this all together, we may as well grab our popcorn because he is not going to be able to pull that off.
You know, the jury will be instructed to put their politics aside. Doesn't matter who you voted for. It doesn't matter how you feel about Donald Trump. But it's human nature. It's
Mm-hmm.
hard to do that. So
Mm-hmm.
if you were voir diring the jury, what questions would you ask them to know that this is someone that is going to leave their politics at the door when they come into this courthouse?
I would ask him a simple question when they hear Donald Trump's name. What were your thoughts and feelings? So I wouldn't ask them, could you set your opinions aside and beliefs aside and give a fair and impartial verdict? I think that answer is going to be no. Okay. I think this is a whole other ball game. You are in a county where it's primarily Republican, and then you're in a Republican state, even though that's not a play in it. I'm telling you right now, if I were in that courtroom, I would be looking on social media all over the place. I want to see a blog, a post, anything that he's going to say, anything about he or she that's on the jury regarding their political views. They're going to be removed. That's the problem. So they're going to be gone. Then we've got our independent. So I would be looking for those independent jurors that are neither affiliate defense, excuse me, Republican or Democrat. And now we can't ask them those questions, but we certainly can search the social media, and you can learn a lot about social media and AI. Also, just based on their posts, if they tend to be more conservative or the opposite side. So there's a lot we can learn. We do a lot more pre-trial work. They have a good idea already what they're looking for. So I don't go by, can you be fair and impartial? Of course, they're going to say yes. I mean, I can be fair and I can be impartial. But the answer to that real question is they do have biases. And when you're talking about the president of the United States, as you know, it's either love him or hate him. It's really hard to find it right in the middle. So to find someone that says, yes, I'm a Democrat, or they lean more liberal, and then they say that they could set it aside, I think that they're fooling you. So what I'm looking for, let me tell you what I'm looking for. I'm looking for, when you ask that question, tell me what was your first thoughts and feelings when you heard the name Donald Trump. You hear the name Donald Trump. That itself should create a visceral effect, right? I'm looking for narrowed eyes, maybe a grimace, maybe a smirk, a pressed lip, maybe a slight little movement in their chair. And that's who I'm going to hone in on. And then I'm going to continue to drill down on those. But I think that when it comes to picking a jury, he's going to fail miserably because he knows what he's looking for, but he's not that smart. He's not going to be able to outsmart these prosecutors. He's really put himself in a really vulnerable position, although he will have an advocate. So if he does begin to go crazy on you, which I'm assuming he may, they'll stop the trial and then they may have to do a quick evaluation. But they'll have an advocate standing by. You're shaking.
I think that it could be a splendid waste of time. And that dovetails into another question. What if the jury starts to form their own opinion about him that he's crazy? He has not tried to use a not guilty by reason of insanity strategy here. But if I'm on the jury and I see this guy and I'm listening to him every day, I might start to formulate my own opinion about him, that he's nuts. Okay, so how do you handle that as a juror? Because you're really not even supposed to be making a determination on his mental fitness.
Well, here's the thing though, they can't express that as an individual, even if they are feeling that way, because it's not open for the entire jury to hear that. So if that particular juror has a question or a concern, right? The judge is going to either decide, I guess, to pull in just him or her, or maybe the entire jury, because you've got them all there. It's just not quite that simple. But if they've already formed an opinion about them, how do they overcome it? They've already said at the very beginning they would be fair and impartial. So, if they found that they were they were showing such extreme expressions and grimaces and whatever, the judge will have a discussion with maybe that particular juror if whether he can stand trial. And if not, that's the reason why we have alternates.
Yeah, but it makes me think of something that my wife says to me all the time. She says, Mike, your face is talking.
Yeah.
If I am talking with a crazy person, I have a hard time pretending that they're not. And these jurors are laymen and women. They're just everyday folks. So you put them in this situation where they have to talk directly to, I know they can't talk to him, but listen to this guy. I can't imagine that they're just going to be stoic through the whole proceeding and that they're not going to be reacting to him. Because some of the things that he's going to say and do, they're going to be reacting. Their faces are going to be talking. Talk to me about that.
And that's really, really good point of view because, that is like my soup du jour. I have been trained to read every muscle movement in their face. And I'm telling you, if he's putting off this impression that he looks nuts, there is uncontrollable, undeniable leakages that are going to pop through onto those jurors, and they may not even be aware that they're actually leaking out information. So the smirks, the giggle under the breath, the puzzled look, or a smirk, or a shoulder shrug, or leaning back. All of that, this is going to be a nonverbal trial because I think we're going to see a lot of that.
I'm going to be in court. I'm going to be watching the jurors' faces. So you give me some pointers, like what should I be looking for on their faces if they're just not buying what he's selling? They think it's rubbish. What would be the tell?
Okay, this is it. Look.
I don't know that I see what you're doing. What was this? Okay.
That's contempt. That's contempt. That person is actually saying he's full of baloney. So when you hear somebody,
Show it
he's
to me again.
expressing
Show it to me again. Okay, you're doing a
this
subtle movement with the corner of your mouth, with your lips.
one side. That's contempt. And that is what we find is that's called moral superiority. In other words, when the juror's hearing him speak, inwardly the juror's going, he is so full of crap. And then you'll see a side smirk, which is called contempt. The other thing is you might see an eyebrow raise, a quick little eyebrow raise, and skepticism, right? You might see puzzlement, right? So where the eyebrows lean together.
There's going to be a
How about,
lot of that.
yes,
I'd put money on that. There's going to be a lot of puzzlement.
right. And then the pressed lips,
Okay.
right? So the pressed lips is like you're restraining frustration and anger. And it can be a really large, like with not only just the mouth, but with the forehead. I have a hard time thinking they're going to do it because they're going to try their hardest to conceal. So when they conceal, that means that they're going to try really hard because not to show this emotion. And what happens is cognitive load builds and that leaks out through these little micro expressions. The eyebrow raise, the smirk, could be you might see something breathing here, like maybe just a pop, like they're laughing out loud, but they're trying to hold it back. You might hear that. You might even hear the sound like this or something where it's inwardly thinking and feeling being externalized through a sound. Shoulder shrugging, or a double shoulder shrug. They're not going to show hand gestures because the box is covered there. So all it is right here in the face. How about face flushing? If maybe the ears might turn red. Maybe you might see some redness come about on their neck. Another one they may rub their neck, right? This might show concern or worry. So there's a lot of
They might be rubbing their temples. They might because like, this guy's going to be giving them a headache.
yeah, probably, but that's pretty obvious. They kind of go like this, or they may turn. Or here's another one. They may shift their body language away from him.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so in other words, where they're attentive, I'm going to assume that they're going to be very attentive. If I were in there, I'd be like, I don't want to miss a thing. I want to see this all because this guy is absolutely nuts. But if they lean back and they're trying to give the nonverbal cue, I'm not interested, they may lean back and they may turn their chair ever so slightly. And what they're doing is giving the defendant the nonverbal cold shoulder.
It's not lost on me or our viewers that most times an attorney will advise the defendant, do not take the stand in your own defense. Don't do it. This goes way beyond that. He's not taking a stand in his own defense. He's defending himself entirely. Is this foolhardy?
Yes, we all know that attorneys will tell you that you're a fool if you're going to. Even an attorney was representing themselves. You're being a fool. Look at what happened to Lori Daybell. If you watch that trial, she represented herself, and she was found guilty on 4 counts of murder. Every single one, she was going to represent herself, and actually, she did a good job, and she was somewhat likable. But this is not, she's used to using her charm and her attractiveness and all that. This dude doesn't have any of that.
All right. Have you had any experience with this where the defendant is going to represent themselves and do they consult with you? Like, I think I wrote, do you have any war stories like this?
I have never had a client represent themselves because you have to remember, I only work with attorneys. In fact, all of my work, whether it's in behavioral analysis, I don't work with anyone that's an individual. I only work with them if they are represented, and I only work with the attorney. And once I'm work with the attorney will advise me what they need my assistance with, whether if it's witness preparation, which I've done a lot of, and get them groomed and ready up to be able to in court to how to testify or their mannerisms and their demeanor and all of that. But I don't do anything where to me, I find that to be really unprofessional. I would never put my reputation on the line for that. Never.
I understand why. It's
Because it's not professional. I have my own standards too. I get to choose what cases I want to work on. And if I believe in the case and I believe in the innocence of the client, then I'm going to give them my wholehearted work. If I feel that the client is being deceptive, the client is presumed guilty. I mean, all the evidence is pointing there. I have gotten to the point in my career, Mike, that my conscience is really important to me. And I feel like that, I also speak to a higher level of truthfulness. And that's my job, right? Is detecting deception. How could I represent someone if I honestly believed that they were lying and they actually committed the crime? I know, as from the defense point of view, they don't look at it that way. I'm telling you, as a trial consultant, I do.
I don't want to be flip about this, and I don't want anyone out there to accuse me of being, too sarcastic or too snarky about this, but I don't predict that the jury will ever get to deliberate on this. I think that there are going to be so many follies along the way and so many antics that this will never go to the jury. I, I just don't see that happening. But I would like to pick your brain a little bit about what would absolutely derail this. And maybe that's what his intent is. Maybe he doesn't even want this to go to the jury. How could he derail this so that it never goes to them?
Well, if it never goes to them, is because he has been proven insane and not able to stand trial. So
But
in
he's not
in
trying to prove that though. Sorry to interrupt you, but like that's not even a question as far as I understand it. This isn't about whether he's insane or not insane. He just is not guilty.
Yes, I understand that. But however, if during the trial and he's, even through voir dire, or if he's even um, selecting the jury, or whether he's cross-examining a witness, if he shows and he's just out of his mind, uncontrollable, then the judge is going to stop. So that's where that it's got to reach to that level. And I think that's up to the judge's discretion, and also to and the two attorneys on, or not him necessarily, but the judge would have to have an in-chambers discussion.
She told him not to do this. She implored him not to do this. He says, "Okay, I'm going to do it anyway."
That's right, but that is his right.
Yeah.
That's his right. So let him go at it. It's going to end up with either a guilty or not guilty verdict, or I have a hard time that you're ever going to get, because either way, when you say that it's not going to get to a jury, I really set that aside because I don't know what I don't know. But there will be a verdict. So whether it be a bench trial or whether it be a jury trial, he's going to go before the judge one way or another. It's not going to just go away. They're not going to drop the charges. He's got to go to trial. So whether they do it in a bench trial or during the jury trial, he is going to be going to trial.
Did you read that yesterday he put something in a formal legal motion that Trump should play golf with him, and if he loses, he can, order him to be executed?
I didn't read that, but
It's nonsense. It's total nonsense. And the trial hasn't even started yet. And this is the kind of crap that is coming out in pretrial motions. And I just want to put this question to you, okay? This is going to be a splendid waste of everyone's time and resources.
agreed. And I think that the jury and everybody knows that already ahead of time. That's not even a question. I mean, you're right on point, Mike. I mean, you're going to be in there, front row seat, being able to see every one of the moves, watch the jury, all of the expressions when he's talking. You're going to see the whole inner dynamics. It is going to be a crap show. It really is. I mean, literally, I'd want to have tickets to stand outside to get in there just to watch this thing unfold.
Yeah. Well, maybe you have more patience for this sort of thing than I do. I have a very low tolerance for BS. So,
Well, that's the one reason why I do what I do, and I'm also a mediator. So I have to be able to set my own, for me, I could set it aside. I may have a bias, but I'm wired differently because I'm in the industry. So I'm able to look at the evidence and then be able to make for my own opinions based on the evidence that's brought before me. But that's not what we're talking about here.
do you think he
Um,
does better with women or men?
I don't think it's going to be a male female. I think that this is going to be about that middle age group. The younger folks probably would be a better choice for him because those are the ones that, they're the ones out there rallying and they like to be part of all of this. The older group are much different. They want to be safe, right? So they really support law enforcement. When we're talking about gun control, that has to be with someone that is safe. So everything about them, and especially remember where they are down south. All the snowbirds are down there and they live down. So we've got a lot of retirees. So if I were the prosecution, I want about many as retirees and older people from middle age on up on there. I want all the younger people on the opposite side. So, that's only just the beginning of the profile. Okay.
Yeah, I
That's
can dig it.
different.
I'm buying what you're selling. Young is maybe a little more anti-establishment, a little more rebellious.
Mhm.
Older people, a little more cynical, a little more practical. So, okay, I'm buying what you're selling so far. Let me
Okay.
see here. What about what about education level? You want someone highly educated or someone with no college education on this jury? Let's go with him first. I'm Ryan Routh. Do I want a highly educated person or
No,
do I? No, I don't want a highly
no,
educated
no.
person.
On the other side, you want highly educated. You
If
want
I'm the
people,
prosecution, I want highly educated.
prosecution, I want highly educated people. On the defense, not so much. Because remember, think about the demographic profile of the individuals that broke into the Capitol, broke into the Capitol. Those are the kinds of people I would want on my jury for the defense. I want those blue collar workers. That's what I want.
Fair enough. All right. What question am I not asking you that I should ask you? You tell me. Mike, ask me this.
All right. Well, Mike asked me this. Are you going to keep a seat next to you so I can sit next to you to watch the whole thing
Oh,
unfold?
that'd be awesome. That would be awesome.
Yeah.
You're in Orlando, right?
I'm in Orlando. I just may make the trip there just because this is kind of an interesting case, so much different than what I'm used to doing because
No
most of my stuff.
cameras in the courtroom though. So like that's cool for me as a reporter because I have to tell the viewer what's going on. I can't show you what's going on cuz no cameras allowed in the federal courtroom.
Well, what you can do though, Mike, you can text me and you could say, this is what's happening. This is what he's doing. This is what a juror is doing. What does that mean? I could then be talking to you through text and telling you and interpreting what those gestures mean.
I got you. All right. Well, I think everybody's going to want to be talking to you during this. I think there's going to be a lot of utility for a jury consultant and a body language expert in the weeks ahead. So that's good for you. That's some potential opportunity for you.
Exactly. Well, do you have any more questions for me?
Oh gosh, I could talk to you for hours. Let me see here. Let me see if I've got more rattling around up here.
I will share with you the main thing that they're going to be doing. If I were on this trial, I would be doing all of my pretrial intelligence. Here's how I do it. Okay. If I, in this type of case, I am going to do a mock trial. I'm going to do a focus group. And anything and everything that I am going to ask that jury, I'm going to test beforehand to see the responses of the jurors. I want to have a really good take on what they're thinking and they're feeling, understanding how they process information. I'm going to determine based on that what were their ages, what they do for an education. I want to know all their demographic profiles. So I already have a really strong profile before I walk into the jury. I don't walk straight in cold shoulder. I mean, I have, but I prefer to do, I don't know if you know that I own a company called the Jury Lab. And the Jury Lab is a technology that actually analyzes facial expressions, the entire panel. And so if you, an attorney presents their opening and closing statements, certain key parts of their evidence, and I'm watching the responses by the jury to find out where I am, who's feeling disgust, who's feeling contempt, who is amused, who's frustrated, who is attentive and who is now inattentive. So I'm watching all of those things, and I have a printout before I know. So I have a good feeling about when I walk in there, what I'm looking for. But this is really, in my opinion, Mike, a slam dunk for the prosecution.
Yeah.
I don't think they have to work very hard on this one. It's just a matter, let's get the jurors in there and let's just get it done, because it just is not gonna, it's not gonna be a question of where he's gonna perform so well that he's actually got a chance. I
No.
just don't see it happening.
Hey, did you ever see that movie with Pacino as Phil Spector and Helen Mirren as the jury consultant? Do you remember that? It was like an HBO movie or a Showtime movie. Oh, it was so good. This is like
I,
years ago, but
you talking about, I know what you're talking about too. And he helped to pick out the tie and everything else, and they're looking at them from behind the scenes. And
yes.
I have met Dr. Phil and I've been on his show a couple of times. And of course, he's the bull.
Right.
He's a trial consultant. So I told Dr. Phil when I met him, I said, all that electronics. I said, you have the show, the bull, but I have this show. I have the actual technology that is not bull. So there's no such thing. You have technology that's in the courtroom. It never happens that way. But we do intense background checks. So, in today's society, people are Snapchatting. They're on LinkedIn. They're on Facebook. They're on all kinds of social medias. And when it comes to the president of the United States, it seems like a lot of people have an opinion one way or another. And so, with that being said, you can gather so much information from that to determine uh, how they would vote. And in fact, if you follow the Casey Anthony trial, what they did in that case, that whole entire case was run by each day was uh, built around social media. So whatever the social media feeds were happening, they would readjust or they would adjust each single day
Jose
based on,
Baez, you mean?
yeah, with Casey Anthony, right.
Brilliant.
So
He put on a great case.
he did. But the social media, if you are seeding or implanting questions out there in social media and waiting for responses, you can gather a lot of intel that way. What does he look like in the courtroom? Does he look crazy to you? How do you think his appearance looks? I mean, just the simplest things like that, just to get responses from people out there.
I'll talk with you again. This was a lot of fun and very insightful, and I appreciate your time.
You're welcome, Mike. Have a great day.
Okay?